Welcome back, my friends. Today we are reading Chapter 13 of Rolling Thunder, Sutras and Swamis. At last the day came when Rolling Thunder and I talked about gathering herbs. It was a quiet evening in camp. The committee people were on their way back to San Francisco, and the half-dozen of us who remained were preparing the evening meal. Rolling Thunder and I are planning to go herb hunting tomorrow, Alice said to me as I watched her peel potatoes and cut them into cubes. I've talked to him about your going with us, and he'd be glad to have you go. I told you he would. But you'll have to talk to him yourself now. He'll be staying for supper tonight, and I suggest you bring it up as soon as he's eaten. That's what he wants, you know. After supper, as we sat around the campfire, Rolling Thunder sat down beside me. Alice told me that you and she were going out to gather herbs tomorrow. I said, if I may, I would really like to go along. Well, I think that might be okay. I don't usually take people along with me. That's not the purpose of it. Well, I have in the past, but it always happened that whoever was along would ask questions and wonder what was this for and what that was for. Or even worse than that, they'd point over their finger and shout, "Look at that big one over there." So I kind of gave up on it, and I don't just take anybody along anymore. I said nothing. But you've been around for a while now, and I think I know you pretty well. Rolling Thunder looked into the fire. I would be perfectly willing to have you join us. But I will say this, I like it quiet, and if there are any questions, save them until afterward. At times like that, I'm in a different frame of mind. You call it an altered state of consciousness. That's how we communicate with plants. For a time, we watched the fire. Then I remembered that he had mentioned this communication before. The night after the rainmaking, he had talked to the committee people about modern man's great separation from nature and how, as a result, natural things have come to seem strange. I was interested to hear you talk about plant communication the other night, I said. You mentioned that you had saved some articles about modern scientists experimenting with plants. I've heard about this before and I've seen some of these articles. In fact, I'm interested myself. I may not learn too much about herb medicine. I don't know, but I am interested in this experimentation in plant communication. It's not a one-way thing, you know. It's a two-way communication. I could give you something about that. Maybe someday I'll put something in writing about how it's done. Then you could carry that back with you to the Manager Foundation. Later, I told Rolling Thunder how I had become interested in chanting when I had worked with Swami Rama. Swami Rama had instructed me to concentrate on chanting. I became interested in the possibility that chanting could eventually be used to produce responses in plants that could be tested under carefully controlled conditions. Through Rolling Thunder's steady questioning, we began a long discussion about the teachings of Swami Rama. I had talked about the Swami once before, because I thought it would be useful not only for Rolling Thunder to know what I had been studying and working on, but also for me to know Rolling Thunder's ideas of some of the points that had come up in my work with the Swami. Now I found myself going over the Sutras of Patanjali, which I had learned from an East Indian Swami, with a Native American medicine man. Rolling Thunder seemed to relate to all of this with total familiarity, and he had a number of questions and comments. I became more aware then of the beauty and impact of Rolling Thunder's speech as he handled concepts I had heard elaborated so eloquently elsewhere. This was a further learning experience for me because it gave me a chance to achieve the transcending of explanation that had come through hearing the same ideas in different words. I told Rolling Thunder what Swami Rama had said about the principles of renunciation and non-attachment. Live in the world and yet above, like the lotus who has the roots in the bottom of the river, but keeps its being upon the surface of the water. Enjoy the world. Do not let the world enjoy you. You enjoy the world. Rolling Thunder liked that. He repeated the words aloud. This is what Swami means by non-attachment, I said. But many serious spiritual aspirants believe in renouncing the things of the world. They leave their homes and their villages and their positions and go to ashrams, caves or temples to be free from distractions and temptations, claiming that the struggle to remain non-attached is in itself a distraction. On the other hand, if the renunciate is inconvenienced by his needs or holds in one corner of their mind that which has to be left behind, he is also distracted. The Swami had said that there has been a very tough and terse debate going on from times past on the virtues of renunciation versus non-attachment. I could guess where Rolling Thunder would sit in such a debate. Only days before he said, "When we're through with this earth and all these problems, we don't have to come back. But as long as we're here, we have a job to do and a purpose to fulfill, and that means dealing with the circumstances around us." I learned that Rolling Thunder does not believe in renunciation as a necessity or even as a possibility. He believes most temple renunciates are being false with themselves and their Mother Earth. He believes when one is done with a thing, it no longer exists for them. While it is there, it is to be either followed, honored, controlled, or overcome, faced and dealt with, and not ignored. In the view of Rolling Thunder, those who have managed to put their earthly business out of sight and mind only postpone it, often with the result that it becomes a future burden. That night I told them a few stories I had heard from Swami Rama, stories I felt he might know in one form or another. The last story was of the Swami and the snake. On the train to Brindavan, a Swami sits beside a common man who asks him if he indeed has attained self-mastery, as the name Swami implies. "I have," says the Swami. "And you have mastered anger?" "I have." "Do you mean to say that you have mastered anger?" "I have." "You mean you can control anger?" "I can." "And you do not feel anger?" "I do not." "Is this the truth, Swami?" "It is." After a silence, the man asks again, "Do you really feel that you have controlled your anger?" "I have, as I told you," the Swami answers. "Then do you mean to say that you never feel anger, even? What are you going on and on? What do you want?" the Swami shouts. "Are you a fool? When I have told you, 'Oh, Swami, this is anger,' you have not "Ah, but I have," the Swami interrupts. "Have you not heard about the abused snake? Let me tell you the story." On a path that went by a village in Bengal, there lived a cobra who used to bite people on their way to worship at the temple. As the incidents increased, everyone became fearful, and many people refused to go to the temple. The Swami, who was the master at the temple, was aware of the problem and took it upon himself to put an end to it. Taking himself to where the snake dwelt, he used a mantra to call the snake to him and bring it into submission. Rolling Thunder, who had been staring into the fire as I talked, suddenly looked at me. I began to relate what the Swami said to the snake. Immediately Rolling Thunder interrupted. "What was the mantra?" "Oh, I don't know. I don't think the mantra itself was a part of the story. At least, I'd never heard it." "Go ahead." The Swami then said to the snake that it was wrong to bite the people who walked along the path to worship, and made him promise sincerely that he would never do it again. Soon it happened that the snake was seen by a passerby upon the path, and it made no move to bite. Then it became known that the snake had somehow been made passive, and people grew unafraid. It was not long before the village boys were dragging the poor snake along behind them as they ran, laughing, here and there. When the temple Swami passed that way again, he called the snake to see if it had kept his promise. Again, Rolling Thunder interrupted. He didn't say anything at all about the what words that Swami used to call the snake. Just thought that there might be probably familiar to me. Might be something like the words I would use. Rolling Thunder did not wait for me to repeat what I had told him, but he asked some question to pick up the story again. The snake humbly and miserably approached the Swami, who exclaimed, "You are bleeding. Tell me how this has come to be." The snake was near tears and blurted out that he had been abused ever since he was caused to make this promise to the Swami. "I told you not to bite," said the Swami, "but I did not tell you not to hiss." That was supposed to be the end of the story. Rolling Thunder quietly looked into the fire. When he saw I was finished, he considered a moment, and then he looked straight up at me and laughed. "That's right," he exclaimed. "That's right." His face became serious, and he stared into the fire as though he had begun to consider again. Then I felt him thinking of the Pinyon Forest chaining issue and the other struggles in which he was involved. His "that's right" sounded to me like he was speaking for the snake. "Sure would be interesting to hear that mantram," he said. "You suppose Swami Rama himself would be familiar with that particular mantram?" "If he does know, I'm sure I could find it out." But I regretted my words as soon as I spoke them. Would Swami tell me if he knew, and would it be permissible to ask? Even for Rolling Thunder's sake? I wondered whether Rolling Thunder would even tell me his mantram. I would never ask him. I turned to look at him. He still stared thoughtfully into the flames. I watched the shadows from the dancing fire hammer upon him, as though they were trying to deepen the lines in his face. And I could see he had nothing more to say. Tomorrow I would go with him to gather herbs. That is the end of chapter 13, my friends, and now we are halfway through the book. It's gone quite quickly. Soon we'll read more. Nyawa. Thank you.
The one that makes me laugh, he said, and threw his arms around my neck. Show me how you do it, and I promise that I'll run away with you. I'll run away.